You're with Stop Now, where we stop, listen, and share. I'm with my co-host, JK.
Hi, Cole. Welcome back. We are back again for this week talk show live. I'm filling in the blanks for Nate. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. We have today a special meeting where we are using our core ethos to bring people together from a range of different backgrounds and across political spectrums to share their story, to come up with the common solutions that we have, and to act in our interests to make the world a better place.
Awesome. I am pretty excited. So this is your idea, right? So we are going to do something different rather than having special guests and talk about a particular topic. We are going to bring in strangers. Is that going to be a stranger danger, or is it going to be some good people? Let's watch it out. If we have someone to join us today, we will have the conversation going on. All right, we are being joined by two new strangers.
This looked a little interesting, so I thought I'd listen in and see what's going on here and get an idea what this is about. So,
okay.
Trying to read up a little bit about you online, but I didn't find a lot easily, but I didn't have a lot of time either. I just saw this kind of pop up. So I don't know if there's some background or something I should be reading outside of this meeting or something. But
well, the meetup group is very new. The organization that we're with is also pretty new from 2020, but we are basically a cause. Sorry. Kind of like a cause or activism collection of people like contributors and paid volunteers, and we try to get people paid for activism, get like professionals to lend their talents to activism and the nonprofit instead of it being just like always charitable or donation based, so people get paid for activism. And so, but aside from that, we are also now a political philosophy discussion group, or applied political philosophy, which means what do we do? How do we solve things? We know if you're here, you're obviously drawn to a little bit more of an intelligent side of, group and mindset. So, we won't question it, but we want to see what y'all's thoughts are on what to do. And I mean, aside from just writing letters to the to our senators, which we can do, and I'm not sure the effectiveness. I should try it out myself. But what else can we do? Because we're all concerned, probably. And we all have a cause or something that we're very interested in or passionate about. So,
okay. So this, your focus can be multifold. Then, really, you're trying to connect resources up to good causes that are trying to affect change across a number of topics. Then, and a number of fronts. Okay.
Yes. So right now we've concerned ourselves mainly with the issues of human trafficking and labor trafficking, racism, racial injustice, and modern slavery as it exists, and domestic and child abuse. So what we're doing is we're just collecting all the things. You know what I mean? We're moving from topic to topic and seeing what we can do and and how we can do it. So mainly it's just been with the show, we've been interviewing ex-police officers, different philosophical or political thinkers. And today we don't have a guest, but sometimes we will. Yeah.
And so you're looking for practical approaches then, or, actual, some leverage against some of these items besides just ranting on Facebook and flaming each other down.
We're interested in information and solutions. And yeah, between person to person, it should be nonpartisan, the group, and be able to amass the causes of all sides, and see what we agree on, and if we are stronger in our greater number, rather than fighting these causes alone, separate. Yeah, this is sort of just my idea. JK, you probably have some more that you want to talk about, but I want to just go around and just ask people what some of their interests were as like a reader or a thinker, and your interests as an activist, or what are the causes that you're most concerned about? If y'all want to introduce yourselves, I can start. No, I won't start. Let's go to Raleigh. Go ahead.
Okay. All right.
I've been talking too long.
Since I'm handy. Okay. All right. Well, I'm a social worker by trade, so to speak. Master's degree and in that, and all my life I've worked in nonprofits, addressing poverty issues, affordable housing, food and nutrition, employment, things like that. What's really, well, besides constantly being aware of kind of the impacts of kind of this late stage capitalism we're in, which has become so dysfunctional, and the disconnect between the average voter and their impact on the government, which you guys were discussing a little bit a moment ago. I was glad to hear that. Lately, I have been part of a couple of other groups and people talking about how to engage with polarized people who have decided that I'm here to destroy their country because they identify me as whatever label it is. I'm a liberal, I'm a communist, whatever that week. It's become so dysfunctional that trying to talk about things that we should have a common interest in is impossible because of all this animosity. And I've been trying to find practical ways of having those conversations, of actually talking to people that, somewhere beneath all the vitriol, they're patriots and good people, perhaps well-meaning. But we are in such a reactionary phase right now. You can't even begin to have that discussion or to work on those things, and we have to, especially since January the 6th. If there isn't some kind of reconciliation of ideas, this is just going to keep ramping up. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are some valid concerns, and yeah, we'll get more into those probably in a little bit here. But Rich, if you wanted to go, introduce yourself, a little bit of what you're interested in as a thinker, and maybe the causes you're concerned with, or that you would be supportive of mainly.
Well, as far as a thinker, I'm an independent, and I probably lean liberal. No, I don't probably, I do lean liberal. And the 4 years that we went through before, I mean, I kind of got involved in the activism in the background, at least, and got a bit on the burned out side. But it's like, I've just have felt like so many people are being discounted, mistreated, marginalized, and I'm looking for ways to support, having that change a bit. And not sure what else to tell you I'm interested in, is because I'm still trying to find out where my niche is. But definitely, I've been a feminist, I've been an activist, I'm not a MSW, but I do work with people and helping them to make positive changes in their life. And I've always tended to want to help people up, and I don't like the capitalistic society we're in. And I look at why other countries are happy and why ours is not as happy as theirs. And I'm here just basically to find out where this is going to go.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for sharing. I'm hearing from both of you a little bit of a concern with the capitalist system, which is, healthy. Not mentioning anything about wanting to overthrow the entire system, of course.
No.
I mean, I don't care myself, but you guys seem pretty metered and level-headed about it. So the idea that people are completely rejective of the fact that capitalism has failed, which it has in a lot of ways, seems outrageous to me. And so I'm glad that you guys brought it up. Yeah.
Also, I'm really frustrated and concerned about this tribalism political system we have, and how you get one tribe and they're sitting there fighting against the other tribe, and it's lost what it used to be about. It's supposed to be about political alliances to help the country and people get to a better place. It's no longer that way, and it's just crazy. And I'm not sure what's going to change that. One thing that isn't going to help is when you have to have multi-million, billion-dollar campaigns for everybody to run, and you're not getting the best people, you're getting who has the most money, or who can get the best, get their tribe to get behind a particular candidate. And I like that some of the cities, at least in a couple of states, are trying to get the one where they have the weighed voting measure. So who's the top 3 or 4, and then from that, then they find out then one of who actually becomes the most popular. So I think that's a better system than just, Republican or Democrat, and you're going to get in.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to say about that. There's a thing called ranked choice voting.
That's what I mean. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So and also, Raleigh, have you heard of it? Ranked choice.
Oh, yeah, or referred to as preferential voting sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's well, I do what I do like about that is it allows so-called marginal participants to actually have a chance of entering the process instead of just being removed because they're not part of one of 2 major parties. I find that positive, but I also find the need to for campaign finance reform. I really like the idea of getting the money out of the process completely.
Okay.
I like to quote Theodore Roosevelt and some older thinkers, and not all of them horribly enlightened in other areas, but who despised that and also favored national laws that would make it an actual crime for any corporation to donate any amount to any candidate. They just wouldn't be funded that way, and any attempt to influence them in any way would be a crime. And at one point even discussed having kind of a death penalty for corporations that did that. The government is here to serve the people, not interests. So the process is critically important, and keeping the money away from it keeps your good men good and doesn't put pressure on them to compromise and keeps the others out. I'll say people, sorry. But yeah, ideas like that are things that I've thought about a lot. What I can actually do about that, though, is, well, that's why we're here, right?
Yeah. And the original Constitution didn't necessarily prevent anything having to do with business in any way. The Constitution wasn't meant to meter or regulate business at all, or even special interests that were maybe virulent that spread in our culture and also entered our politics, like racism and what you're talking about, this division or this striking difference in our different parties. I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Cole White. I am interested in mathematical philosophy and also science fiction and political philosophy of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
My interest in causes is something basically like what they're doing, I guess, in a few different places, but the collection of every cause into one and using our collective power together and finding a common ground in order to bring all of us together so we can do a general strike whenever we wanted to, and also get laws enacted to protect us from being fired if we strike, which the corporations will definitely use, because they're definitely against civil rights, because where are the CEOs when the wars or George Floyd gets killed? Where are the CEOs? Where's their voice? So if you want to ask if capitalism is saving the world, it is certainly not. It hasn't even spoken a word against any injustices. So at least domestic. Sometimes they do international philanthropy. But that's it for me. I won't go too far, and I'll diatribe and say too much. But yeah, JK, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
So probably Paul knows me. For Rich and Raleigh, I'm JK Guru. I'm part of this Stop Now Foundation, and I'm going to listen, take the middle path here, and I'm not interested very much in politics. And so, but then philosophy of life and different topics are kind of interest to me, but I'd like to play the devil's advocate, always be a troublemaker and be the corporate lawyer and defending them, so that like we can have some conversation and debate here. That's about me.
Okay, thank you, JK. Yeah, so what I'm seeing basically is that there is just basic agreement between all of us right now. Well, JK probably is trying to stay apolitical, even though he has opinions. He just is afraid to share them. But keeping the money out of politics is a big one for all of us here, for sure. The division, the tribal political system, or the finding inter-party communication techniques is very interesting. So what's that issue? Is it cultural? Is it political? Does it pervade both, or does it one influence the other? I'm not necessarily sure, but let's talk about it. So Raleigh, you said you actually do these inter-party communication technique kind of training?
Well, I've been paying attention to another Facebook group that has been looking for techniques like this. And because I'm really a macro social worker, my work is really in policy and agency development, but we're all trained to a certain extent in communications. And I've had a lot of training in meeting facilitation and consensus decision making as well. And so this group was talking about actual techniques for having that conversation with that opponent, a political opponent, and somebody who may not even be, almost resistant to hearing from you. And they've been looking at different authors and thinkers about how to do that. And so there has been some exchange about that. There's a particular gentleman that has developed a technique for having, I wish I could remember his name right now, but my brain slips sideways and I forget. But the gist of it, for instance, is he says that all you eggheads out there, all you well-meaning folks who want to quote statistics and try to convince people with facts, you got to stop it. Because it's really about hearing about people's emotional state and their experiences, where you can begin to break through some of that. And it kind of makes sense, actually. It's not what we do in social work. Emotions are always dealt with first, as they are in a lot of consensus models as well, because progress is not possible unless those issues are cleared or identified early. And so he actually has seminars, and I can provide the information about this guy later. But it's a matter of having that conversation, and without the goal of, you're not there to change their mind on the first get-go or convert them right off the bat. Your first idea is to just put seeds of doubt in their mind that you are an asshole. You are simply trying to get them to start connecting with you as a human being so that you can begin. And part of that is by finding out what they care about and listening. And so it's a painful thing, but it's one of the best suggestions I've heard so far. Getting a chance to practice it, though, is another thing, because the venues for that are so few, because it's hard to approach. So there's some other items too, but they're very they are well thought out systems of communication. So that's what I've run into so far. It seems pretty small, though, in regard to communicating in the way that we have to with whole constituencies and political parties, but it is some beginning. So,
yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I mean, in my communication, I have a lot of communication with the the other side, as you might put it. That basically that a lot of my, like, I'm willing to have a political discussion like in the front of the convenience store. You know what I mean? Like if somebody mentions something political, like I'm not going to drop it. I'm going to say something too. Like you get yours and I get to say what I want to say. But the idea is that when you're communicating sometimes with a conservative mindset, they're really upset. And they have a lot of emotional attachment to what they're talking about. So you do have to listen to them. You do have to just kind of sit there and hear out their story because they've got a long one. And then, and not try and change their mind, but almost just tell them, because they never ask, but I mean, they're not gonna tell them your personal experience, and just a little thing, just, a little something just to drive a little bit of the point home. And that's it. Just plant the seed, basically. And the thing is that a lot of people think that talking or political discussion is a fight, because of like arguments that they've already had in their head about you, that they've already decided that the conversation is not going to go well between a liberal and a conservative. And because liberals are guilty of this too. That they know that the conversation won't go well, so they don't even talk in the first place. Well, the problem isn't necessarily the communication. The problem is getting the conversation even started is an issue. And that's a bad place to be in, because the more we don't talk, the more angry we get, having those arguments in our head, and not having the other person there. And liberals are expected to be the empaths, like to take their skill at feeling for other people and like listen to them, listen to the conservatives, share that. Why don't they listen to us, But we have to, if we're going to be empathic, like, let's be empathic. Let's do it. You know what I mean? Let's really use our skill, because that's what we're good at. So let's do it. Let's listen to the story and let's solve this thing. But what else can we do? Besides a public, advertising campaign? How can we put this into action in our daily lives? Well, maybe we can put up little, we could tag. We could probably do that, like little messages. Because sometimes when people tag, this in Portland, Rich, people tag ACAB in place everywhere. You know what I mean? Which ACAB stands for All Cops Are Bastards. But that's
didn't know that. Okay.
That's not necessarily the most helpful thing to say.
I wouldn't think so.
No. So, I mean, isn't there a way where we can put up posters or something in a public place, and have the communication, like, just say something pithy that will open the communication lines, like something that'll catch on. Like, I don't know. This is a brainstorming session now, guys. So you have to understand there will be bad ideas, a lot of bad
Okay.
ideas, and maybe one good idea.
Well, we can try to hope for some
That's
good ones here.
Yeah.
In the brainstorming motif for a second, I want back to what Raleigh said for a second. And yes, we got to get into conversation. Cole, I agree with that. We got to find somebody to talk to before we can go anywhere. But in effect, what we're talking about is, according to Gregory Bateson, it takes 3 or more perspectives to ever have true wisdom. So if we go into this, instead of it's going to be me against you, liberal versus conservative or whatever, if we go into it like we're in effect in a mediation process, and we're going to have to hear what they have to say and agree with some of their points, and in the same way then be able to tell them, here's what I stand and here's what some of my points. And if we can agree that we accept it, whether we agree with them or not, but we accept you have a right to your points, can you then also agree that we have a right to ours? And then from that point, then we can see if there's some commonality or some mutual way to have a conversation. But if we sit there and it's like, I'm right, you're wrong, and that's basically what these conversations sound like, then it's not going to go anywhere.
Absolutely. One of the key factors I've found is the ability to admit when someone else has a point and to humbly accept that. The few times I've been able to engage at all, that's actually been very helpful because that person was surprised. They expected just a complete resistance to everything, and they didn't get it. So, but that means that the people doing this, either they have to be very well trained, or they've got to be especially insightful and control their own personal trauma, right? As everyone's walking around with things that trigger them, right? And do it. It's kind of a tall order, but
So you know how like Ted Nugent got like he got a lot of spread on the letter that he wrote right after Donald Trump lost the election.
yeah.
So
I can't remember the letter, but
how do liberals get that kind of spread? You know what I mean? Like how do we get that, and how can we use it? Basically, we can use it to say something like what we're saying right now. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Where's
yeah.
our Ted Nugent?
I see. Oh, okay. All right.
Who's our Ted Nugent? There's got to be someone, and like we'll go to him and like have like share this idea, like to spread the message that not just have the conversation from person to person, because that'll take so long to actually open up the entire country. And we got to take the money out of politics, and both sides want that, I think.
I don't know if I can agree with that. I do not think either side actually wants to get the money out of politics. I think both sides win because that's how they've learned the game. And by getting the money is how they stay in power. We've got to get a different mindset, a different conversation going. It's not that they're going to agree to get that out. It's we have to give them enough reasons why it's a healthier choice than what they're doing.
Well, I think the point there, Rich, is that nobody can afford to be the first one to abandon it.
No.
Because they're in combat all the time. No one's going to go for a new system if it means they lose the next election. So it's like this forced engagement.
Exactly. And as long as the system is that way, and if it's everybody piling money after money, and that's what everybody behind them says you got to do, it's not going to change unless some independents or somebody can prove that they could do it without doing that.
Well, I'm saying they don't have to do it independently. That basically legislation could be enacted where you have some sort of bipartisan support, and you have it basically eradicated in 1 year or whatever. That would be sort of more preferable than somebody saying, okay, I'm going to get the money out of politics by not accepting campaign contributions. And then, okay, obviously, like you're going to lose. So I'm not even going to vote for you, So, I mean, I think there is a possibility to introduce legislation. But like I said, are they two totally independent issues? No, I mean, like the party communication and getting the money out of politics. are those two independent issues, or do they have some sort of interconnection? Because if they do, let's start the intercommunication between the parties first,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can get stuff done together after that. So if that's a good idea, I don't know. So this is a thinking group. This is a hard thinking group. Unfortunately, this isn't like a sports game or anything like that. It's less entertainment, more just punishment. But this is a bad idea for a group. We just started doing this. JK had a game that he usually does, and he was supposed to help out. We like ask questions about like the political issues, and then yeah, we were gonna do gift cards. JK, we have those.
Not that I'm aware of, Cole. I'm just
Okay.
Trying to understand like where do we go from here. So the point is whether you are right or left, right? All the humans have the ego, and that's always I am right, the other side is wrong, no matter what. And even before you start the conversation, it's like, let's take any one topic and let's see like how we do and what do we agree upon. So when you are going to start the conversation, you already have the conclusion in your mind saying, this is what, if people are agreeing to me, I will side with them. If not, I'm closing the door. So that's already predefined in every other cases. That I'm still wondering like how that is happening, right? Is it because of our cultural thing or a family thing or religious thing? How does that, because politics for me is power grabbing. So Raleigh and others, Rich also mentioned, so you all know that very well. Those who are hungry for power to control more people, they want to get into the politics. And in that game, only money can provide you the sustainability. Otherwise, you will be thrown out. There is no idealism or something like, it's simple as that, right? So you can't fight with someone bare hand when they have a gun, right? So
Yeah.
what are we talking here? Like, how do we solve this, right? There is no solution as such, but it remains with the individuals. That's my question. So what is the problem and what is the solution and where do we stand in between?
Okay, one of my thoughts is we'll take the country, we'll split it up into maybe 5 or 6 different sections. And in each section, we give them a different opportunity to try something differently. One area that does it the same old way, one area that does it differently, one that takes the money out, one that has it only coming from socialism. I mean, that's not going to happen, but it's a thought. It's like, problem for me is that our system is so entrenched in the way it is. It's like, how do you get out of it? It's like saying, is capitalism better than the socialism that you would have in Denmark or someplace like that, where they're happier and they have a system and they pay more taxes, but their system works better than ours. But you're never going to convince people here, never, not likely to convince people here to try some other system. How do you break the system which is so entrenched? That's my challenge, without changing the country, for splitting it up into sections.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that for a long time, and it's occurred to me that one of our main problems is the adherence to ideology prevents people from considering certain systems separately or even considering them. Because you say, well, you ask the Danes or the Swedish or whoever if they think they're communist or capitalist or socialist, and they'll say yes, because they have blended systems and they don't necessarily equate one with patriotism or theology. But in this country, if we talk about a free economy, people assume that means some kind of democracy. They equate the two, and they're not. One's an economic system and one's a political system. Just like if you say, they ask you if you support the troops. Oh, you say, well, I'm against the war. Oh, well, then you can't support the troops. And to me, all of this is an impact of kind of this 30 years of talk radio and propaganda and simplifying complex issues and encouraging people to adopt these kind of knee-jerk reactions and not have the difficult discussion, just double down and find a way to insult the other party. So before we could test anything, we have to assume that there are well-meaning folks all over the place. You just may not see them or hear them. Because even in their own tribal groups, they may be afraid to say anything because we've gotten so extreme. We attack people and say, well, gee, that guy might have a point. You see? So somehow we've got to find a way to encourage people to be safe, maybe, I don't know, or model better behavior. We don't have thought leaders in it. We don't have, I don't watch a lot of YouTube stuff, but these, what do they call them? Opinion, there are people that lead trends or become
Influences.
Influencers. Thank you. Where are the influencers that influence the way we talk to each other or encourage better behavior? So, but I guess we keep saying the same thing over. There's got to be a way to get in the door. There's got to be a crack in the door here somewhere where you can begin.
Yeah, maybe we could start this group to start being a let's start talking group where we have a conversation between the right and left, or all sides, hopefully. So we're not just mediating a conflict or whatever.
Right.
That we have all sides of the perspective. Because most of the philosophy groups, most of the political stuff that I see, or political philosophy, or like social justice and action groups are all liberal. You know what I mean? So we all talk to each other, we all agree with each other, and I definitely agree with you, Raleigh, on almost everything. So but we're just agreeing with one another. But where's the other side? You know what I mean? Maybe we should start having the conversation. Maybe we should start that group. That's something.
Yeah. If you had a group that was properly facilitated so that
you have to set up rules.
Your opponents could feel safe.
Yes.
And this is hard because even in using that language to talk to some of these folks, they're not interested because I'm an egghead. The anti-intellectualism sometimes that gets in the way. But assuming that there's a way to do that, if anybody remembers Eisenhower or Republicans, I used to be able to talk to these guys, and it wasn't just, sure, we disagreed, but we didn't hate each other. And at some point you could talk about what works. So if there would be a way to attract those folks and start modeling that behavior and having those conversations, I don't know how, but
well, it could go really wrong.
If I can also kind of hitchhike in between here too. Part of the challenge we have is we talked about right left, and we're talking about conservatives versus liberals, and that's black white thinking, and it's like we have a whole rainbow in between. So it's like maybe we need to start talking to people more in the in between areas and get them where they can agree and they want to do what's right or make positive choices, rather than, gee, are you, can I pull you to the left or can I pull you to the right? It's like, because that's really where we are. We're sitting there going, you're right, I'm wrong, or I'm wrong, or you're right, or vice versa. It's like, how
I think
we got to have a conversation that includes more people, not just issue.
I think that people identify sometimes with the ideology sometimes, or at least think that the other side is wrong, but they don't necessarily refer to themselves like totally as myself. I wouldn't call myself a Democrat. I wouldn't call myself any of the parties on the left. I just think that the Republican or conservative kind of view is a little bit toast and it's a little bit old, and that people on the right kind of feel the same way. They don't necessarily cringe calling themselves a Republican, but really all they really have in common is they have these sort of sometimes right wing, sometimes not views, and they definitely think that the liberals are wrong, or the image that was conjured up to symbolize the liberals is wrong. So they just sort of declare themselves as opposite to that. So yeah, the talk group is an idea.
If you could separate topics from their assumed ideology or the baggage they have in our political environment, what if we get, this issue about corruption in politics, for instance, I always thought that, and I tried it and it didn't go anywhere. But an awful lot of people who identify as right-wing supporters complain about corruption. Now they have what they consider to be corruption. I'm not exactly sure, but I know it does include a lot of these guys don't appreciate money changing hands in exchange for influence either.
Yeah.
And I kind of assumed if you can say, if we could suspend each other's reflexes, or assumptions enough to say, if we agree that corruption is an issue, let's define that and focus on that thing. And you don't have to agree with me about anything else today. Can we discuss that? Can we find a shared issue that gets to somebody's sense of civic duty and patriotism and the positive values that a lot of people still share, but we don't ever get to talk about those either, right? Because we end up in these ridiculous catfights all the time. I always thought that would have a chance. But somebody has to believe you when you say that. So you have to start with people that are willing to take a risk at being wrong, right? Or exposing themselves to someone who the media is constantly telling them that person is trying to deceive you. I'm a recovering religion probably shouldn't come into this, but I'm a recovering Catholic myself, and one of the kind of traps in terms of thinking that I ran into that has always bothered me is this idea that even questioning your own ideas was a sign of weakness or faithlessness, or that you were being deceived. And I kind of think that is an issue right now. I sometimes feel like people won't even, if I say, let's talk about the economy in a neutral way, and I'm not trying to make you a socialist, but let's talk about what's working and what's not. There are people that believe that even having that conversation will demonstrate that they're not a real American, right? And this is the best of all possible worlds and no one has a right to question it. We want the pragmatists, right, who are looking to improve things, whether it's enlightened self-interest or not, but they're focused on what works. or what could be better. And I'm going to stand. I'm going to be quiet a bit because I'm talking too much.
No, so you're doing so good. You're doing so good. So I'm taking all this down actually because you're basically outlining the group. So the talk basically this group, I'm just stealing your ideas now. So this is going to become a thing. The Let's Talk group is going to be emphasize safety, and in order to separate ideology from the concepts or ideas, we can talk about something that's not necessarily partisan, like maybe the corruption, like political corruption, taking the money out of politics. An easy topic, you know what I mean? Something to sort of slant the typical like conversation they have in their head. Like they don't talk about corruption in politics or the money in politics and stuff like that. So maybe we should talk about the stuff that nobody thinks about, to do that. And to be able to question your own ideas, I take as a form of evolution or self-evolution. Because if you just cling to an idea and never drop it, that means if the idea is ever challenged, that you can't modify it. You know, challenged in a way where it's actually that you may think that it might be wrong. You have to modify it or change it or all out scrap it in order to evolve as a human being. And because the world changes, your ideas have to change because the world is different now and you have to adapt with it, and it's okay to change. And that there is a definite probability of improvement in the system. We're not saying that the system is wrong. We're saying that there's a definite probability that you can improve it. And that's definitely the case because with anything you can improve it. There's a chance, or there's capacity for improvement. This is not a perfect system. We all know it's not a perfect system, but we can make it better. And so we should try to improve it instead of just letting it go, and also letting the world change and the political system not change. And so therefore render us, susceptible to all the forces of, weather and God, I guess. So I'm just stealing all your ideas, Raleigh. Is that cool?
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's what this group's for. But I'm afraid I'm not saying anything that probably isn't.
So white man does that all the time.
What?
JK?
No, I said like white man does that all the time, stealing.
Appropriation, right?
Well, that's the difference between plagiarism and research. Plagiarism is you take one person's idea and steal it. Research is you steal them all.
Well, since I
we don't say steal, though, we borrow them all.
Yeah.
Well, a couple other things in here too. That one, if you're going to have this conversation, Cole, there has to be a frame of reference for how you're going to start it with them. And somewhere in those conversations, it needs to be for every 2 steps forward you've taken, you need to also take a step back and acknowledge what it is about them that's acceptable, how their thoughts are okay, what their beliefs are okay, their tribe is okay. Some way you have to make that it's acceptable there and that they're not all just completely wrong and bad. So yeah, it's conversation, but you've got to have some ways of stepping back and acknowledging their thoughts, their background, their concerns, and making that also acceptable.
Yeah. So those bullet point ideas that Raleigh had, and also and more, should be some sort of presentation, maybe 5-minute presentation in the beginning, to get everybody started, get everybody initiated into the sort of rules of the game, the like safe sort of environment that we'll have. And getting everybody to introduce themselves actually breaks people's defenses down a little bit, because if they introduce themselves, they are, more prone to, they open their soul a little bit,
Well, you still have to get in the WIFM station. What's in it for me?
Oh.
So if you're gonna start this conversation with them, you better some way tell them why they want to even listen to your channel.
Okay. All right.
What about we give out gift cards if anybody admits they're wrong?
Okay. That's one way to do it.
What's in it for them, and it's difficult because some of the be careful because some of the ways that we phrase things, if we have a kind of a liberal ideology, it shows because in itself it's a framework. But I am assuming that people of various political shades want to make progress on these issues. They want to end deadlock.
Yeah.
So to me, that's one a positive there. Where is there a place where you can discuss solutions to difficult issues and not be attacked and not allow anybody else to attack, so that let people with their more reasonable or pragmatic or positive orientations shine through so that they can actually be heard.
Yeah, it sort of takes sort of a different ilk or people of almost vision to come up with some of the transcendent ways of escaping some of the conflict. But I think that everybody can do it. There's just a way to do the introductions and do have everybody introduce themselves in a presentation to sort of get it. I myself am working on a paper on communication, or at least little story or pamphlet, I guess, because in my community, people have gotten so out of control with arguments that we don't communicate anymore. What we do is just accuse each other of something, and there's no communication after that. It's all just defensiveness.
Right.
So, and the ways in which we communicate, I'm really concerned with logic too. So the ways in which we communicate, we say something like, you are this, like, and they say, whatever you are a socialist. Well, what they're doing is they're providing a claim, and they don't provide any proof. So
Right. Well,
we have to require proof, in order to have an actual conversation, or we have to recognize that if you say something is something else, that you can't just accept it. And if you say the word it implies there's only one of them. So what you should usually be saying is a, because there isn't only one of everything. Like if you say, what's the meaning of life? It's a ridiculous question. If you say, what's a meaning of life? It's much more accurate, I think, because to encapsulate everything into one grandiose concept or idea is ridiculous. And so therefore you can see the problems in communication that arise.
you will lose a certain number of people with that language.
Oh yeah.
Because there are people that do believe there is one answer. And in trying to even talk like that, I've seen that happen. Because if I'll try to make space for somebody's religious background and say, whatever your spiritual orientation is, or I talk like that, if they are some extreme branch of Christianity that's very insulated, that will turn some people off, because they will. I'm definitely a heathen and the enemy, and that ends the conversation. It occurred. I'd like to see a situation that's open to everyone. But I kind of feel like we'll be trying to talk to people that are kind of centrists in their particular orientation, so they're at least able to start the conversation. I don't know if I don't think we'll talk to too many Proud Boys while we're in here. Okay.
Maybe I should invite them. Maybe I should make the group. Maybe I should make the group say Proud Boys discussion group.
Or say Proud Boys welcome.
Proud Boys welcome.
If you can get them to come.
Yeah. And part of the challenge that we're talking about here too is when we, back to the ideology again, when we're sitting there talking about we want people to come from something, if they see us as particular ideology, they're going to either not come or cut us out. And I'll give you an example for me. I am an independent. I voted for Ralph Nader, okay? Give me a break. I mean, it's pretty independent. So, but when it comes to Oregon, when it comes to, they want to do the politics and things on it, because I'm an independent, I do not get, they lump us in with the Democrats, but they will not give us the right to vote until the very end. We can't vote on any of the local people. All they do is they give us a registration and a ballot at the end for the independents.
Right.
So we're not even allowed to talk to the Democrats. See, we're marginalized just because of the fact we're not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. So we got to make sure that how we talk to them lets them realize that yes, it's in fact open to all of them. And you're right, Raleigh, we're only going to be talking to the centralists, the people in the middle who are somewhat open to having conversation and have the intelligence to want to do it or the heart to want to do it.
Right. The intellectual honesty that you can find everywhere. It's not just among liberals. That's what I meant by Eisenhower Republican. Yeah. Those are the people that seem to be missing from the conversation lately in regards to the right. We get to hear from all the extremists. I mean, the ones that shout are always heard better, but where are the other? There's not. I'm from the Midwest. I have all kinds of relatives that will take all kinds of conservative positions, but they would never hurt a fly on your head. And they're smart people, and they're reasonable if they don't feel attacked or think that it's somehow their duty to just dismiss you.
So I just want to jump in here, right, Raleigh, on that, what you said. So the root cause of all evil is religion. As you mentioned, you are recovering from religion. I don't know how offensive you will take this, but I'm trying to play the devil's advocate here. For me, no matter what, if you are a conservative and you stick to your religious belief, you are a dumbass, you are a fool. You cannot be an intellectual, period. Why I say that is all those belief system propagates the thing over generations, and it spoils and stops the progress of science, and it impacts the economy and politics, everything. So that's the reason, like I say this, like it's a root cause of all evil, because they are carrying the dead body, dead weight, the religion, and dragging it across the world, right? Everybody is like, the conflict is still on that age-old problem. And if you look at it, we cannot let go of the God thing. And I feel so offensive when people say God in which we trust. What is that you are trusting? You don't know whether it exists or not. You can't see that. And you are not able to trust the human being, the people who are right in front of you. And you make policies and decisions and do things to affect the peoples. So that's just a simple example. In the Texas, right now, after this pandemic, the school is going to reopen, and the school education systems are running around and sending emails to parents. You will laugh at it, saying that like, we don't want to come in between the conversation of a 5-year-old child and a parent, and we will not enforce them to wear masks because the governor says like it's not mandated. So are you going to teach your kid? Why am I going to send them to the school? What's happening, right? So each state in United States itself is so horribly doing things wrong. And how do we, it's a war out, right? That's why, like I say, there is no rules. Even if you put rules, it's not just about conversation, right? We are at war with each other. It's like, just like the animal kingdom, we are animals and we want to survive. So that's what is happening here. In the listen mode alone, saying that, oh, let me invite them and have an argument. It's going to end as a war. It's going to be a fight and name calling. all those things is going to happen. I know like cold might have done that before, but I'm just saying that like unless
It was with people within my own party. That's okay. That's on limits.
that's the point, right? I'm trying to make. Unless you agree to my side, you are my enemy. That's the simple concept, right? How do we break that? It's not that I don't know that.
Right.
That's why
Well,
like I start that up like here.
So I noticed in the language there's a lot of it's a lot of we are at war. This it's you use words like be and is. You made a lot of claims or a lot of objective statements, but could they just be subjective statements and perspectives rather than objective statements? Because I mean, like I said before, when I hear words like that, I require a little bit of proof, because it's not necessarily so that well, what was the example about the school? I don't know how that sort of linked in, but yeah, I don't think that we're necessarily at war or not at war, but if I did make the claim, I would have to prove it. I mean, the insurrection, I guess, is a good the Washington, I guess the storming of the Capitol building is a pretty good example. So yeah, that's me sort of contradicting my own point there, and the Ted Nugent vitriol that sort of comes out of that side, and the right-wing pundits that sort of they do a lot better of a job of damning and sort of giving us the Inquisition, whereas the left wing doesn't necessarily do that as much, or at least I haven't seen like I don't know.
They don't have as much airtime, but
like NBC doesn't, or they don't do as much of that. They just sort of try and speak factually, even though, as best they can, but they don't do the sort of the ranting about like the other side, or about conservatives that the other side does. Fox News is just all over liberals, like left and right. They won't like stop lambasting or indicting them for all the harms of society. And you hear a lot of Republicans say that socialism is the reason for dictatorship, but there isn't a lot of voice for liberals saying that conservatism is the path toward dictatorship, unfortunately. So is it a war, or is it a one-sided war? Because it seems like that one side is more emotional and wrapped up in being a bit more accusatory than the other side, seems like.
It occurs to me that doesn't really matter, because in order to move forward somehow, someone is going to have to take the risk and show a little grace and be a little more long-suffering perhaps than someone else, and make room for people that are steeped in our current culture, where we're so used to just responding negatively to each other, and especially the right, because they have this kind of they have Fox News and various groups that seem to have today's talking points already outlined, right? This is how you respond. This is how you, in constant combat, but how they never come up. Today's thing to consider, today's item for discussion is, what does Social Security need? Not how did the liberals ruin it, right? So they feed that to people all the time. It takes discipline. I've seen some groups that have worked very hard at learning consensus decision making and how to talk to each other in responsible ways. But the truth is that nobody's perfect at it. Everybody swims in their own culture and has their own points of view, and some of which aren't necessarily objective or fair, because that's who we are. We're humans. And I think J.K. pointed that out. I mean, ego is ego, right? And so it's the way you conduct your discussions. It's the value or the principles you try to live up to during the discussion. The method is really important, but also it is the well-meaning guy in the room who just got called a jello head by somebody. Do they have the strength to let that one pass today? Right? So that the other person can learn to trust them. These are, I've been doing anti-poverty work my whole life, and it's always felt like a war. And that may have been the wrong analogy, because there were other people involved who didn't necessarily think that they were at war with anybody, but they opposed me. And they were decent people. And then there's a handful that just, yeah, they really are very, very extreme. We're not going to talk, but okay. So we won't be making any progress with them, and that'll be that. But.
Have you done a lot of the consensus-based like conversation kind of techniques, or you think you have? Oh, okay, so it hasn't really worked out much though.
It can. The issue really is you can outline principles for having pretty healthy discussions and meetings, and you can provide that to people. And if they agree on that before they discuss things, that really helps. It's about experience too, because when someone gets upset, again, emotions must be dealt with first, and really deeply held beliefs, or where people feel threatened, that's hard to always address in an academic kind of way. People don't know how to feel heard about that sometimes, or the other people involved might feel you're insincere. But you have to start somewhere. So the trick, I think, it occurs to me that where the best progress was made that I've ever seen, and it was where there was some sustained interaction. If they will come to this discussion group and keep talking, and keep, Stephen Hawking said that, in fact, now that I think of it. Keep people engaged and keep them away from the Fox talking points or whoever's talking points. I shouldn't always, liberals do it too, and everybody else in between.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just.
See,
I probably sound a bit Pollyanna-ish. So, well, this is hard work, and I want to offer something really valuable, and I feel like I'm.
Oh, you're nailing it. You're nailing it.
Yeah, but it may not be.
It may not be
if it worked that well, I'd be. It's hard. And there are people that do it much better, but because you got to begin somewhere.
Yeah, I think just regular people coming together rather than it being pundits could be a good thing. And Raleigh, I'm taking down all these ideas. Like, these are great ideas. I mean, in the framework of actually having this thing, I would love to have you if I did have another meetup, if I did have another event, and I said, let's talk. Proud Boys welcome. Let's talk, or somehow to get a placard that would get both left and right to come. Would you come?
Sure, sure. I would try.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, I could even outline some basic rules for the discussion, for how, not what's discussed, but just how it's discussed.
Yeah.
And every community meeting you've probably been to has gone over these, but I wonder if in a situation like this, how often that's been tried or offered. For instance, you would agree that in our discussion, we don't talk over each other. There'll be no personal attacks. This is all pretty common stuff. Then you identify a facilitator whose job it is to maintain the process and not to take sides in the content, right? They just look at process. They don't take sides.
Okay.
And then that can help a lot.
Okay. Yeah. I kind of like the facilitator to be a little bit politically inclined himself, like to at least show where he's at, so that he sort
They
of
can make the, this is where I would disagree. Now, if they have a political leaning, they should state that.
Yeah.
But actually, the best models I have seen, where I felt people felt heard and the safest, and I saw some progress. I used to do a lot of neighborhood meetings and things like that with neighborhood associations and everybody from realtors to landlords to bankers in those meetings arguing about their various stakes in the development of a neighborhood. And that kind of stuff can get heated. But a person who can be the ally of everyone in the room to help them make themselves heard and understood and clarify what they said and not twist it, that does help other folks feel like talking more. So
okay.
You see what I mean? Because that fear that whoever's conducting the leading is real, the meeting is really, they're really in charge of the agenda, and then they're putting a spin on the outcome of the discussion. A lot of people are afraid of that. So it's also important to have someone take minutes and keep them accurate. But
yeah, I would say maybe a 3-minute time limit too on what people, how long people can go.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can ask people to be brief in their discussions.
Yeah.
But the point is that you try to do that up front and show goodwill, and then you have enough people in the group with some experience in it that they can be good examples, right? And model it. And often that will take a lot of the vitriol out of things and settle people down. But it's still, there will be people that will not shut up or will go over their 3 minutes. I said the longer groups work together and get to trust each other in that process, the better. And that's about that, again, back to the sustained contact with that other group. So if you're going to build a community, we all have to recognize each other as part of it somehow. And that's the hard part.
I was thinking, did the facilitator, did you say that he should be the one to clarify what people said? I'm sorry, I'm just learning from you now.
That's just reflective listening, they call it. Let's say you made a statement about a particular policy issue, whatever it is, Social Security, poverty, campaign finance reform. And I'm listening as a facilitator, I'd be listening to you. And if I thought what you said was a little bit unclear, or perhaps you used language that was a little emotional and not especially, it should be accurate and not leading, if possible. Then I would say something to you like, Cole, what I hear you saying to the group is that you believe that preventing donations above $1,000 from any corporation or any individual to any politician would be an adequate way of leveling the playing field, and that we would still have a campaign contribution system, but the dollar amounts would be limited to those amounts, and then we would have less to fear from that kind of influence. Is that what you meant to tell me? Right? And then you could say, no, you got that completely wrong. Okay. And then our job is with the group to make sure that whatever you said, we get it right. One of the first rules is you want everybody in the room to really work at understanding each other. This is why some of these groups start very small, because this kind of practice a lot of people find arduous too. They're used to that kind of democracy where it's an up or down vote, and we cut discussion short sometimes in favor of that, and don't listen and bolt ahead. So, but there's examples like that.
Okay, Raleigh. Well, I think I've tapped a lot of the resources that you came and you offered. I don't want to tire you.
No, this is good stuff.
Yeah,
it's kind of interesting. It could go down in flames, but it would be interesting to try. But I would think that we should discuss a lot of different things first. But there are other approaches. To some extent, I think a group trying to do this also they would have to agree to a little bit of training for themselves. They should review some of these skills and think about them, and just kind of absorb what it is to be a productive member of a listener, who's as fair as possible, right? And but you've still got a system here though that's based on some principles that everyone has to. There's some basic values here, rather, that anybody participating in it from any point of view is basically agreeing to. And one is that you value logic and evidence and respectful communication. And the most important one is that you're assuming a level of goodwill. Yeah, I didn't just come to this meeting to be a plant and do something untoward to the group, or just exercise my agenda.
I just took down everything you said verbatim. I think that was a very good way to describe it. Value logic, evidence, and respectful communication, and the most important one is that we assume a high level of goodwill, or I think it was high level of goodwill, but something like that.
Well, enough so that we can treat each other like, at some point we're going to have to take a risk on treating each other like people.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean you have to. I would also assume, though, that one of the other assumptions, one does not have to surrender their logic or their most important values in order to treat somebody decently, except in the most exclusive cases. Okay. I mentioned the Proud Boys, but I'm at the point in my life where I won't sit down with a Nazi. So maybe I'm a hypocrite, but there's a philosophy there that basically says everyone else in the world does not belong here. I don't think there's a basis for communication. That, because it's such an extreme point of view. I don't know if you can talk to that, or so maybe I hope someone show me. I just don't know how.
It's interesting that you mentioned the term egghead before, because didn't that term come from actually the Nazis?
Oh, I don't know. It could have been. Yeah, they had a certain amount of that. That
So
was
basically, they called these intellectuals so easy to beat up that you could practically just push them over and their heads crack on the concrete like an egg.
right. Yeah.
And so they call them eggheads.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting to bring up the Nazi thing, because obviously, you know, are we waging a war on somebody's ideology, or are we having a war based on intellectualism? Are these people just dumb? Are we, you know, assuming that we're smart? You know, or are we smart and them actually not really able to grasp like any higher logic that might, you know, basically prove them wrong? Like, as a Nazi, I mean, how do you become a Nazi? It's usually like through prison or.
Well, there's a lot of indoctrination, or you're raised in the Hitler Youth Program and you grow up hearing that. The same way children that belong to families in the Klan become Klan members. I mean, they're indoctrinated. And you have to leave room for that. But
No, it's that they feel like their culture is being erased, right? They feel like they're.
That's the narrative they're telling themselves. I mean, part of what I'm suggesting is that if we can get away from the narratives and the ideology that we're all either we're hearing reflected, and I still think it's more from the right, but even the left says that, has those assumptions, for instance. If we could actually talk about issues and not be surrounded by those assumptions, the assumption being that all you white folks you're all 100% evil, all right, which some of our conservative or extremely conservative folks actually think we believe that, or that people of color believe that. We are people in a room. The other thing you would that I would insist on if I was running a group like this: when you speak for yourself. I believe that this policy should be thus. I feel like that. Not everybody knows that you Oregonians all eat your children. You know, right? No, trying to avoid the demagoguery. Right. Back to what you said about if you're going to make a statement like that, you wanted some proof.
Yeah.
But you know, trying to find a way to short circuit this stuff. Again, it depends on some people of goodwill have got to try, no matter where they're from. But
So I, me, not you, they, or them.
yeah, you own your statements and your ideas, and you don't try to vaguely attribute them to some group you don't speak for, or present an image that everybody knows that this is wise. Everybody knows that this is true. They may not. Everybody used to think smoking was good for your health too. Whatever, you know. But I think are we boring everybody else to death here? I'm afraid that
Rich is gone. Rich is long gone.
Oh, I see. There's 3 participants here, so somebody must still be logged in. Okay.
So for me, when Raleigh, when you mentioned that, right, I'm thinking that like if you are going to say in singular terms, right, I, me kind of thing. So in which case you cannot go past certain historical facts or
That's what I was
ideologies.
I thought of that exact same thing, but that you could be able to discuss facts and not necessarily opinions or what is it, feelings or what is it? I don't know.
Well, if it's a well-known historical fact, like World War II happened, all right, there's evidence for that can easily be arrived at, and a lot of people are aware of the evidence. You're okay. But when you make an assumption about how a group feels, or you make a grand statement about what the truth is about a subject that's not clearly understood, then you have to be careful with that kind of talk, especially if you're making that reference to another group. Everyone knows that Trump supporters want slavery. They want the new slavery. They want to bring back the old South. Okay. Nobody should let me say that. It can't be proved. It's inflammatory. It's not useful. If I was really concerned about that, then my job to come to the meeting would be able to have some evidence, and I shouldn't even state it like that. Unless, of course, it's in somebody's political planks. It's written down on their website. Okay, well, there's my evidence. I'll show that. But you're tempted. Huh?
Sounds like there are just a lot of rules. Like, it sounds like there's just so many rules to get through in order to do this thing.
Well, a lot of it's if you're into, you said you're into mathematical what
Logic.
Did you say? Logic. Well, it is kind of think of it that way. These are just guidelines for a fair and open discussion as is possible. And then the other really nuanced side of it is helping people deal with emotions. So when somebody is not speaking in a room, for instance, you've heard from all the other participants, a really good facilitator will make eye contact with that person in the back of the room and say, John, you represent the local labor union or whatever. Do you have a perspective on this issue? And so they're keeping track of who's had a chance to speak their truth. If you're trying to come to a consensus, it's important that everybody, if we're going to work on some shared truth or understanding, that everybody gets a chance to speak. If they look like they're upset, this is where it can get really complicated, because sometimes you need to address that. And if people aren't open or easily say, look, I really feel offended right now because of the language that Cole used a few minutes ago, and I'm going to address that.
That always happens, right?
And that will happen. Absolutely. And then if you have a process where people can do that, you address it right there in the meeting. But it can derail things too. With all this stuff, though, if it's consistent and sincere, people will begin to get that, and it gets easier. But the process itself can be a way of breaking down some walls. So I've seen it work pretty well. However, if there was an entrenched person who really just they really didn't have that goodwill I was talking about, it won't work very well for them very long. They'll continually be unhappy, and they'll let everybody else know it. But it depends on if you're working on things topically, though. Maybe that'll help, because you'll be moving from topic to topic. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Raleigh, for sharing so much, just being just a resource of a vast amount of information. Would you want to contribute or collaborate a little bit more? If I wrote up a set of rules, could you maybe revise it, and you want to take part in this?
Sure, I'll do that. Yeah, I've done that. That's pretty simple meeting facilitation stuff.
Okay.
I've got a lot of training, but there are people in Oregon. By the way, Oregon is where a lot of the kind of research in facilitation got done. You have a couple of intentional communities out here that I think one's called Alpha Farm, but right out of the commune, right out of the 60s. But one of the things they did is they studied the communication and meeting technologies, if you will, of the Iroquois Confederation, which you guys were talking about briefly, and the Quakers. who created these kinds of structures a long time ago. And then they refined it and they started teaching it. It's actually, there's a lot of people that do this now. So there are people out there that are really good at this. And, you know, instead of, you know, I'm trained. I'm not a teacher.
Well, I mean, if you teach, don't you learn more?
Yeah.
Like in what is it, med school, or when they're training to become a surgeon? I believe the rule is watch one, do one, teach one.
Right. Right. Well, that's true. Yeah.
So, yeah. So if you leave your email address, you know, we could maybe collaborate a little bit more on this. And also, I'll release the event for next week or whatever, and I'll invite you. But yeah,
Right.
We're about to wrap up here.
Yep. This is very interesting stuff, and I do appreciate your role, by the way, sir. Keeping everybody honest is a good role.
All right.
Some house rules, as Cole was mentioning, and we have some announcement as well. Join our team. We are welcoming everyone. Volunteers are welcome. We are looking for enthusiastic volunteers dedicated to support our mission, our cause. You don't have to just donate or be a mute spectator. You can join our team, and the link is there. Our website is provided there, and you can even join this call in the Zoom link. And we are welcoming like graphic design experts who can help us out in creating posters, banners, and also we are looking for some PR guys who are good in public relations. And also we are developing some new communication products. To develop that, like, we need more volunteers. And also, as Cole is also a writer, and we need more people to support us, do research on our campaign projects, and also creating newsletters and magazines, coordination, all those things. We are welcoming people. And also, if you would like to be part of this show, to host the show, to do audiovisual production, you are always welcome to join us. You can sign up through our website, or you can send us a chat message or call us.